just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. On the 27th of April, 2018. This is Friday Java, our magazine show, and we'll be looking at some polling today and where it is. The people from the University of Virginia, that's at Charlottesville, where Heather Heyer was murdered by white supremacists. Unfortunate situation there. But things there have changed also. We'll look at the latest from the people there at the Crystal Ball. We'll be looking at some Republican races. No breaking ground there, 50-50 prognosis. So we'll wait and see. But firstly, we'll go to Arizona. This is Channel 12 News. We carried this segment earlier today when we had our Bill Cosby special. Bill Cosby and Me Too, Me Too and Bill Cosby. It was the working title. I believe on some channels you'll see the title that Me Too got Bill Cosby. Well, there's two ways of looking at Bill Cosby. We'll talk a little about that. We invite you to look at that particular episode that went up this afternoon. But nonetheless, this is in Phoenix, Arizona, the capital of Arizona. Crowds of over 50,000 rallied there at support under the hashtag Red for Education. Supporters marched through downtown Phoenix, starting at Chase Field and ending at the state capitol there in Phoenix. A monumental situation when you consider that at one time Arizona was the hotbed of modern conservatism. Barry Goldwater himself Mr. Conservative came out of Phoenix, Arizona. And there were hotbeds of conservative voters in Arizona. Of course, the reason for that obviously was Arizona had some military bases. They also had agriculture was a king there. And they had a right-to-work economy. Those were some of the hallmarks there. A lot of military people retired there, and a lot of retirees in general in Arizona for the winter months, and stayed the year round. So that blossomed into a conservative ecosystem. But what has happened to Arizona? It's always had a large Latino or Hispanic population, larger today than it used to be. Places like Phoenix and Tucson, etc., are much more progressive than they once were. So you're seeing some of those congressional districts red turn blue. Gabby Gilbert was there at one time before the attempted assassination there by a right-winger in Arizona. These are some of the things, but this teachers' walkout, strike, whatever you want to call it, is monumental. When we start Friday Jobber, we hear from Madonna. She's talking, of course, about the Women's March and how it matters, and we now know that it did indeed matter. But these types of events, when you get 50,000 people and plus out there was probably more like 75 or 80,000, but building from communities. Schools are community-based by their very nature. Small towns, cities, etc., PTAs, moms, those are the people that populate schools along with students. They all turned out there onto the Republican Ducey. Janet Brewer, let me read some comments from her. She had made these comments on the election from nowhere, as one would say, involving Lesko. Wearing red together at Wesley Boyne Memorial Plaza. That was the rally there. We see some of it there. Ducey told that he's the governor. He's committed to getting Arizona teachers a raise and has proposed a 20% raise by 2020. Education leaders are not very happy about it. I also heard that he's talking about just a 2%. Nonetheless, the former governor with News 12 on the phone said that she feels education should be Arizona's number one issue. I got into politics because of my kids' education, she said. The former governor criticized Ducey, the man who succeeded her, for his handling of the situation. She said, as a governor, a politician, you've got to listen to the people you represent. She said Governor Ducey has a tiger by the tail, and anger one at that. She said education is very, very important, and Arizona has to fund it, adding teachers aren't getting paid, and no doubt about that. Arizona has run way, way back of most modern states in this economy. Thousands of teachers marched on the Capitol. The Senate adjourned after discussing, of course, the state budget. They'll be back on Monday there. She also tweeted, this is Jan Brewer again, photos of the march saying, sleeping giant is awake at the state capitol today, and you can see it, miles and miles of it going on at the state capitol there. So I believe if we can tweet this, one of her tweets here, we'll put it up on our Ecom 210 site. That's the official site for the macroeconomics report, but we'll put it there. And we've also put on the Facebook outlet the Phoenix action there. The proposal also will deliver an additional. Now, teachers have earned this raise. He said this is Ducey dancing around. To deliver an additional $100 million for school funding, including a support staff. That Ducey's funds are there to make this happen since the economy is booming, he says. we're getting close, he claims. He says teachers, he said, Ducey will have raises and be able to count on this raise. When asked if he'd meet face-to-face with leaders of the Red for Ed, like they have been asking, he said he's already met with parents, teachers, and school superintendents, where he's not planning to meet with them. But whether or not he meets with them or not, it doesn't matter that much. Superintendent of Public Education Diane Douglas joined News 12 earlier this week. She called the strike a premature. Well, she's superintendent of education. We didn't forget about what she had to say. It doesn't really matter. Some very nice pictures here of the march we put up here earlier, and people reacting to it. And
the biggest story happening right now, not only here in Arizona, but across the country. This could be one of the most pivotal weeks teachers in Arizona have seen in a very long time. They are set to walk out Thursday morning if there is no deal in place to fund pay raises for them and school support staff.
Team 12's Brian West is live now with a look at what could potentially happen over the next couple of days. Brian?
Good morning, Paul and Emma. That's right. Thursday is the big day for the walkout. Meanwhile, this week there are a lot of walk-ins that are still scheduled, including here at Mitchell Elementary in the West Valley. Congressman Ruben Gallego is expected to be out here with teachers and educators around 7 o'clock. Now, last week, the Arizona Educators United and Arizona Education Association said they tallied more than 50,000 ballots. 78% who voted said they wanted to strike. Governor Doug Ducey has proposed to give teachers a 20% raise by 2020. Arizona educators, they're the lowest paid in the country, and teachers say the governor's proposal does not meet all of their needs. They are also demanding wage increases for support staff, restoring education funding to the level it was in 2008, and allow for no new tax cuts until the per pupil spending reaches a national average. Now, this morning, Congressman Ruben Gallego, as I said, was expected out here. 12 News has also verified that if a walkout does happen this Thursday.
The walkout has already happened. Let's go now to the crystal ball. This is Larry Sabato's shop. Raising the ceiling, but not the floor, as they call it, on a potential Democratic House gains. This is by Carl Klondike. He's the managing editor of the Crystal Ball. The key points, they put them up, and we will go over. The number of potential vulnerable Republican seats is growing, and we are adding an extra 10 GOP-held seats to the likely Republican column this week. All these members remain solid favorites for re-election, but at the same time, many may seem likely to face better funded challengers, and of course challengers that are more attuned to their districts. There are scenarios in which Democrats may gain more than 23 seats, net seats. They need to win the House, perhaps double that or even more, but the overall odds to take control of the House remains at 50-50. Now, they go to this Debbie Lasko race. Now, this was Arizona 8. We covered it, and we invite you to tune in to our coverage of it. That was a historic Republican seat. In fact, those characters there had not voted for Democrats since the 70s, a long time. And the last Republican that occupied it before he had to leave, the Democrats, the last 4 years, 2 elections, did not even run anyone against him, period. So they are moving it from likely Republican to safe Republican. She won by 6 points. Was the victory there. And some of these people here, the ratings from safe Republican, David Swanwicker, he's in Arizona 6, likely Republican there. Lasko, they moved from likely Republican to safe Republican. Tom McClintock is in California 4th, likely Republican from safe Republican. Nunez, who's been making a lot of noise in California 22, likely Republican there. Scott Tipton, Colorado, let's see, what is it? 3, likely Republican, Rob Woodall. Georgia, 7 to likely Republican there. And Wagner, she's in Missouri 2, to likely Republican there. And Richard Hudson, North Carolina, 8, I've never heard of him. Likely Republican. They got one toss-up here. Leonard Lance, he's in Jersey, 7. And Dan Donovan, New York, 11, not sure where that is, leans there. All these are lean Republican. Bob Gibson in Ohio, 7. Mike Turner, he's also in Ohio, 10. Rav Norman, that's in South Carolina, 5. And Dave Bratt, that's kind of interesting. That's the one that took out the majority leader at the time of the House of Representatives. That is Virginia, 7 to leans Republican, likely to leans. And C.M. Rogers out in Washington State to leans Republican from likely Republican. Anyway, the toss-up, Dave Bratt, now he's the one who took out Eric Kenta. That is an interesting district. Is not as hard right as he is. He's an economist at a small university. He's also a member of the Freedom Caucus. He came in on a Tea Party situation there. Eric Kenta had not been taking care of his district properly, and they got rid of him. Trump underperformed. He won the district by, 6.5, a few points down from Willard Romney. In the recent gubernatorial race, the GOP edge was cut further down. Ed Gillespie carried it by a little under 4 points. Democrats seem likely to have a credible nominee. They have a former CIA agent, Abigail Spanberger. They are a Marine named Dan Ward. Well, what can I say, I suppose? Dan Donovan, he's a Republican, former Richmond County. Oh, this is a Staten Island conservative area in New York. One of the more, New York 11. And evidently some character named Grimm, Michael Grimm, who just got out of jail, claims that Donovan is not conservative enough. Grimm seems likely to push Donovan, and Democrats have another well-heeled candidate with a military background called Max Rose. So away we go. Trump won the district by 13 points, but Brown is probably the strongest opponent. This is out to Kathy McMorris Rogers. This is Washington 5. She's number 4 in the leadership, up only single digits on Lisa Brown, a former state Senate majority leader and university chancellor. This is East Washington, is definitely a Republican area. Trump won the district by 13 points, but Brown is probably the strongest opponent. This Mick Rogers, McMorris Rogers has ever faced. That'll be an interesting race out there. I think it's out by Spokane. I'm not sure. Anyway, of the 10 previous safe Republican members are moved to likely Republican majority were elected in 2010. Now, 2010, that was a year, an interesting year there. Barack Obama had been elected president in 2008, came in 2009. That was a reaction, a lot of racist amicus to Barack Obama and the Tea Party answer. So when you look at that environment has no doubt changed from 2010 and on to 2012. You heard the Tea Party. The Tea Party is virtually no more. There are remnants of it still around, but we don't see the Tea Party as once said. That's how this Brett, who was a libertarian, slipped in that district. A lot of macro organizing going on. there, so we see a lot of that. If Arizona 8 could be competitive, Arizona 8 could be as well. Wait a minute here. Oh, this is Schumacher. District heavily Republican, but Trump won it by 10 points after Romney won it by 25. Arizona 8, I believe Arizona 6. I didn't have my glasses on now, but I'll go into some of these others. Nunez, who had national face, said Nunez newfound notoriety cuts both ways. He's raising a ton of money, but his prospective November opponent is Andrew Jantz, a Fresno County deputy district attorney, also coming on board as Representative Tom McClintock, who sits in a suburban. This is up around Sacramento. Trump won it by 15 points. One thing to remember, up around Sacramento, outside of the city, there are some conservative patches there. So that does make a difference. Another one, Scott Tipton. He's from Colorado 3. Represents the Republican but often competitive western slope of Colorado. He's evidently expected to also have a very tight race there. Remember, members of Congress aren't really pushed at all, either in a primary or general election. That's true. Most of them do not have to face this, particularly incumbents. And their House outlook remains the same. If the total 211, that is the number of seats, ranked as safe, likely, and leaning Republican, 198 safe, likely, leaning Democrat, and 26 toss-ups. Splitting the toss-ups even at 13-13 would lead to a 24-11 Republican House, a 16-seat gain for the current House, with which is 41-95. But still, you're talking about over 10 seats here, and the Republicans are not very movable, as I guess we'd say with a checkerboard. That whether or not they're in the more independent-minded caucus or the Freedom Caucus, the politics are just about the same. You don't find very much a deviation from that. We talk about a floor for Democrats, a gain of 10 to 15 seats for the Democrats should be about the lowest we can expect. That could be true, but as to wind this up, the party that elects the next speaker has basically won out. So we look back at that. Let's jump back here and look at the polling while we're here. Interested, this Harvard-Harris here poll has a DJ Trump at 44% and Rasmussen at 47%. Both of those are outliners as far as we're concerned. Harvard-Harris Dems up by 9. Too early there, wrong direction, right direction, wrong track. Has it by 18 points, right direction at 35, wrong track at 53. But that doesn't really mean very much at all. That was on Thursday. But looking at an article here by Pinhead Penn, if you remember, he was the advisor to the Hillary the Monster Clinton in 2008. Anyway, his little article, I won't read it all here, is a strange and curious America that a former FBI director who was fired from his job after exceeding his authority in ways that 2 presidential campaigns condemned, and who then leaked confidential memo about the president he clearly despises. It's an interesting thing here. But that is by the circus out media politics legal system has become. Indeed, on one channel is James Comey. We'll have his book out here, is One Step from Jail, and on another channel he is the spear that will bring down the president. On one network, the Russian collusion theory is done, and on another network it's just a matter of time before DJ Trump's personal attorney flips on the president. Probably will, because the president thrown him under. Anyway, in the latest Harvard Caps Harris poll, 70% say that the special counsel Mueller and his deputy counsel Rosenstein should not be fired, but 72% say they need a second special prosecutor needs to be appointed in the actions of Comey and fired Deputy Andrew McCabe should be criminally investigated. This is just nuttiness. So, the more we learn about these massive investigations that were started, the more we look so corrupt that the entire investigation now could now be qualified as the fruits of a poison tree, a doctrine first adopted by Felix Frankfurter. I'm surprised he'd quote Felix Frankfurter, but anyway, let me just finish this up. Pinhead Pen, as usual, is a pinhead. Let me see. Let's see if we can get Mr. Pinhead Pen here. I'm trying to get the last paragraph of Pinhead Pen. Anyway, the best way to end all this is not to fire Mueller or Rosenstein or wait for them to wrap it up, but to challenge the entire process in court as irreverently tainted. If Mueller does not agree to end the investigation in exchange for presidential interrogatories, those are written statements that lawyers draw up and are answered by other lawyers. Anyway, try to block, then it may be time to try to block the whole thing in court with full discovery into whether it is a foundation was corrupt. The stonewalling actions are so blatant that the doctrine of the fruits of the poison tree could be involved to stop the national destruction. Pinhead Pen was an advisor to President Bill Clinton, and including his impeachment. He's the chair. Now, this is where it surprised me of the Harris poll recently released. Micro trends squirreled. Anyway, whatever. I thought I'd bring that out just because of this poll, which is word us anyway. And looking at Harris Online poll, become a member and start earning rewards from your favorite brands: iTunes, Starbucks, Amazon. What a waste of time that is. There we would never expect something as lucrative as just flummery. All right, we covered the Arizona teachers. And let's go now to the latest one to drop here. Let's get Nancy Pelosi in here. Defends the party intervention in Democratic primaries. That was a big charge that was leveled during the 2016. The leader, Pelosi, defended her party's operation on Thursday after a candidate in a contested primary in the state of Colorado released audio tapes of the whip, Steny Hoyer, urging him to quit the race. I don't know that a person can tape a person without a person's consent, then release it to the press, Pelosi told reporters at a weekly news conference. In terms of candidates and campaigns, I don't see anything inappropriate. What Mr. Hoyer was engaged in a conversation about the reality of life in a race as to who can make the general election. Nonetheless, it was released by The Intercept, the audio of the 2017 meeting between Hoyer and Leaves Tillman, a green energy entrepreneur running for the Democratic nomination. That was in the 6th district of Colorado. The Democratic trending district, one of 23, but elected a Republican to the House, while backing the monster for president is one of the party's top targets in the November midterm. The Democratic congressional campaign has thrown its weight in the race behind Jason Crow, an attorney and veteran running a Senate-led campaign, a more Senate-led campaign than Tillman, who supports universal health care and other planks of Bernie Sanders. In the conversation, Hoyer told Tillman that a decision was being made early on by the Colorado delegation to back Crow. And this happens a lot. This isn't the first time that Tillman has reached out to reporters with details of Hoyer's meeting. Politics Colorado obtained detailed notes from the meeting afterwards. In other words, the news was put out there. Hoyer told Tillman, according to both the notes released in January and the auto released this week. The story raises eyebrows amongst Democratic activists 1 month after the DCC waded into a larger national conversation by releasing opposition research on Laura Moser, a candidate in Texas 7th, and warned that she had many gaps that would make her unelectable if she won the nomination. The Moser controversy, which will not stop Moser from securing a spot in the 22nd of May runoff, kicks off a wave of negative stories with Democrats who felt pushed aside by the DNC. Greg Edwards, a candidate in Pennsylvania 7, told the Post last month about DNC's local operative urging him to quit and a run for the state Senate. Kara Eastman, a candidate in the May 15th primary for Omaha's 2nd district, also cried foul when DCC backed the former congressman Brad Ashford combat bid over her insurgent campaign. Just a lot of this going on out there. Please donate to three progressive Democrats there, Tillman, etc. From this mic, we personally have been donating to progressive Democrats that are out here. Let me just check and see if we can get a little bit of this audio up here. See if we can record Revelation here. Yeah, we'll see if we can get it.
In his farewell address, President Obama told Americans that if they were fed up, they should go out and run for office.
If you're disappointed by your elected officials, grab a clipboard, get some signatures, and run for office yourself.
And in the Trump era, thousands of Democrats have heeded his call, running for office in elections across the country. Meanwhile, in the race for Congress, the DCCC, or the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, has moved aggressively to crush competitive primaries. DCCC officials and senior Democrats are hand-picking moderate, business-friendly candidates and are attempting to push progressives out of key races. In Colorado's 6th district, one of the most competitive seats in the country, the DCCC moved in early to select Jason Crow, a corporate lawyer, as the party candidate, pushing resources, endorsements, and money to Crow while elbowing out progressive Democratic competitors. The Democratic Party often denies that they play favorites. What follows is a meeting between Congressman Steny Hoyer, the number 2 Democrat in the House, and Levi Tillman, a progressive running for the nomination for the Colorado seat.
Levi, I want to talk to you about this congressional race.
Absolutely, that's what I expected.
Yeah.
You would like me to get out of the race.
you keep saying like you and of course that's correct.
Yeah. I know you're fundraising for Crow.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm for Crow. I am for Crow because a judgment was made very early on. I didn't participate in the decision.
So your position is a decision was made, very early on before voters had to say, that's fine because that's the DCCC knows better than the voters of the 6th Congressional District, and we should line up behind that candidate.
That's certainly the consequence of our decision. There are two things I'd like you to consider. One may be easier than the other. The first would be if you stay in the race. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I would hope you would not. I'll get to that. But if you stay in the race, it is not useful to the objective to tear down Crow.
Mm-hmm.
Crow's clearly the favorite. That doesn't mean he'll win. It just means he's the favorite.
I hear you.
That doesn't mean it's right. It just means
no, I hear you.
Right. I don't know Crow well, but I think he's a decent human being.
So before we go any further on that, Crow is the favorite. In no small part, Congressman Hoyer, because the DCCC not only put its finger on the scale, but started jumping on the scale very early on. And I'm born and raised a Democrat. I mean, it's undemocratic to have a small elite select someone and then try to rig the primary against the other people running. And that is basically what's been happening.
I hear you, and I disagree.
But you were part of that process
Absolutely.
as well. You said
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
I've been at this a long time.
Yeah.
When I said you need to get in strong, hard, and early, you disagree with me. Obviously, that's your choice.
You guys are shoveling money at him.
We're going to continue.
You're going to continue to do it?
We are going to continue to do it. And the reason why we're going to do it is because a decision was made to focus. It was clear that was our policy and our hope that we could early on try to come to an agreement on a candidate that we thought could win the judgment. Mm-hmm. And to give that candidate all the help we could give them so that we would have a unified effort going into a general election.
Which means, effectively, Congressman Hoyer, I'm running a campaign against Crow and against you and against the DCCC because you guys are on Crow's side.
Yeah. Frankly, that happens in life all the time.
Well, you heard it here, and we'll link this up there from the Intercept. When we see this kind of thing happening, it's unfortunate, but it is politics. No doubt about that. Congressman Hoyer, like he said, he's been at it a long time. They've decided to hitch their wagon to a different type of person. What progressives have to do is, obviously, what's happening now, is get the word out. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Tillman will win, nor would Crow. But what it does mean is he will get an opportunity to run and get his message out, particularly about universal health care. That is very, very important. And my advice to Mr. Hoyer and company, we've been at this a long time too, that they should at least stay behind the closed doors and not be so upright, because the only thing they're doing is, and again, is they are angering the progressive part of the Democratic Party and independents. That just literally rattles in the front of democratic practices that should occur. It is the politics, we understand that, but when you put this out and gloat over it, that's telling the people that back Mr. Tillman that we don't need your votes. It's that simple. And maybe they don't need those votes. That's the same thing they told Sanders voters, Bernie, that they didn't need us. Well, we didn't need them either. And DJ Trump is sitting in the White House watching Fox News as a result of that. But yet they did not learn a lesson. The struggle between Congressman Ellison and Perez. They went and got the safe candidate Perez, and he has the audacity to send out fundraisers to progressives that are not interested in him and his fundraisers. Now, this impacts on many of the races that the Democrats need to win, because the bad taste in the mouth is not only in the Colorado district there where Mr. Crow and Mr. Tillman is, but in other districts around the country, period. And this is not a good situation to be in, period. Now, they can literally, as they say, put their money wherever they wish to put their money, but the situation is, if it affects other races that are very, very close races, and then there is a big problem occurring. Tillman, while studying for his PhD, founded an energy-efficient engine design company in 2012, was appointed by Barack Obama to advise the energy department. He's simultaneously a legend of Democratic establishment, as he's the grandson, I didn't know this, of Tom Latos. We remember Tom Latos on his mother's side, and the grandson of Nancy Dick on his father's side. He grew up in a working-class family in Denver. He also speaks, in very interesting, Chinese, Spanish, Portuguese, and Japanese, and as said, he said, for rapidly diversifying a 6th district. This Crow spoke at the 2012 convention to support a repeal of the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell. He previously served on the Colorado Board of Veteran Affairs, served in the Obama administration, and John Hickenlooper. There, his first advertising focused on Coleman's support for the gun lobby. Crow worked representing corporations accused of misconduct of me become a liability in his campaign. List names of lawsuits defending, payday loan characters. This is terrible. A fracking company. Now, there are other races here, they go on to say, in Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Texas, Nebraska, California, and beyond. Progressive candidates are filing. DNC has mobilized to support moderate candidates. We reported many first-time candidates told by DNC that because before they could be considered to add to the quote-unquote performance Rodex test, they can raise $250,000 or more from the list. Well, that's okay. And Laura Moser, we talked about her, whose party views has too liberal to win the 7th district. That's in Houston, Texas, meaning she has a shot at the nomination. However, the appeal backfired. Second place in the Democratic primary. I think we reported on that or around that. Tillman reached out over email to Democratic officials, etc. Let's see what else is going on here. Sort of a back and forth. The party didn't give me any resources that they gave Jason Crow, said an attorney who was running for nomination for the 6th district. Arrested, dropped out of the race in March and endorsed Crow. Well, I don't know. This is back and forth. You give you a little bit of the article here. This is the Intercept. Video was produced by the Intercept's Travis Menord. And let's see, Lauren Frisney. Anyway, this is some of the people for the Intercept. And I'll just pinch this on. The Fong is the person behind it. Trump, I think we talked about this, said that Cohen represented him. That was on Fox News there. Of course, we talked about Bill Cosby. But adding to the list, the list goes on, this is Variety, Tom Brokaw, accused of sexual harassment by a former NBC anchor. Interesting here, Linda Vaster had a reputation for covering tough stories as a war correspondent for NBC News in the 90s. She spent 3 tours of duty in the Mideast, took assignments in Africa. Her biggest battle was she said she was a victim of sexual harassment by Tom Brokaw. Of course, Tom hosted the nightly news for 22 years, wrote about the Great Generation. 2 friends of Vaster told at the time, collaborated her story with Variety, and she shared her journal entries for the time period. Brokaw has been married to Meredith Auld, A-U-L-D, since 1962 and has never been publicly accused of sexual harassment till now. Brokaw said in a statement, he said, the allegations, I met Linda Vaster on 2 occasions, both at her request 23 years ago because she wanted advice with respect to her career at NBC. And that is all he said. Vaster, who was 28 at the time, the alleged incident, said she didn't report the conduct to police or NBC's human resources because she was scared it would end her career. She left NBC in 1999 and went to anchor her own show on Fox News. Well, it kind of tells the story right there. Through 2006, speaking now because she believes her story sheds light on the culture at NBC News. Well, maybe so. Linda is doing like others before her have done to give her truthful account in the hope that other women will not have to endure that. Ori Wilkenfeld, her attorney who represented victims of, who is this? Matt Laura. Oh, yeah. Linda Vaster was in 1989, was hired by NBC to be groomed as a foreign correspondent. When foreign correspondents were foreign correspondents, they sort of, as they say, bit to dust now. He started out as a researcher, then a field producer, then was sent to Tripoli's affiliate, more on-air experience, and then Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Remember her there. Anyway, the Weekend News in 1993, at that point, at 28, one of the youngest correspondents in the network, she was assigned to cover Paul's trip to Denver. Oh, well. There was a culture at NBC News, in my experience, where women who raised questions about misconduct got labeled as troublemakers. Well, that happened in many, many places. In terms of next time I saw Brokaw, I can't remember, but I know when he assaulted me, which was the first week of January 1994, I was in New York on assignment for Weekend Today. I was preparing to go back to Washington, where I lived, and I was sitting at a desk, a bar desk, when I received a computer message from Brokaw asking me what I was doing that night. Barely knew him. I didn't work for his broadcast, but one of the most powerful men at the network sends you a computer message, you answer. So I replied that I checked out of my hotel and was going to catch the shuttle back to D.C. before the snowfall. He wrote, but it wasn't a good idea, he said, about staying in New York to have drinks. Then wrote a second message. Nah, too risky. Anyway, whatever this deal was there, I tried to use humor to signal that I wasn't interested there. It was inappropriate. She was 30 years younger. I got really scared, so I called my best friend, who was a producer, Ian of the Washington Bureau, in my journal. Well, whatever here. Anyway, I took a cab to the airport, caught a shuttle to D.C., but when I got to LaGuardia, I missed my flight, so I took a cab back to Essex House, checked back in, put the phone into my lap and started returning calls. Every correspondent travel was kept in a central file that anyone could access, so anyone could tell where I was. Okay, learn something new every day. One from a friend, another one from a source, and the third was Tom Brokaw. He was coming over to order milk, and he was coming over to order milk and cookies. Anyway, I'm going to stay on the phone with you and let you hope he changes his mind and doesn't show up. And 30 minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and she realized that it's Tom bringing him milk and cookies. Oh, well. So I struggled of what to do. I didn't tell you like Russell, that reference was Tim Russell, who was famously Catholic. Then he shot me another annoying look and offered a man that could end my career. Anyway. Tom parted the sofa when he introduced to sit down. I sat down. So I was afraid. This goes. I brought up a case of sexual harassment that happened in D.C.'s bureau that caused a lot of pain, I said. And then he leaned over and passed a finger on my lips and said, "This is our compact." He grabbed my neck and tried to kiss me. I held the amount of force in the strength of his hand, supposedly. I broke away and stood up, and Tom, I don't want you to do this with me. And if I did, I would leave for London and with a loss of innocence, etc., whatever. I stood at the door, shaking for a long time, called my friend and told her I was safe and told her exactly what happened. The next day I got back on a plane to D.C. Brokaw repeatedly sent me a computer message that I refused to answer. He finally sent a message later in the afternoon and said something like, what the hell? I want to lower the temperature on this. Call me. Put down the extension. It was so powerful I didn't remember verbatim what he said. Anyway, shortly after I moved to London in '95, it was 50th anniversary of VED Day. I think I remember that one. And let me finish up her long story here. He parted anyway. The same exact way in 1994 he reached, wait a minute, with Bob Redford, I battled with the anchor of the NBC Nightly News, is boasting about his star friend. He parted the sofa as I sat reluctantly again. I sat down as his hands made a mental note of how swollen his knuckles were, reminded of just how old than me he was. I'm not sure what all that means. Oh, swollen his knuckles, I see. Exact the same way anyway. Can you walk me to a taxi, I thought, and I just tried to, wait a minute. You just tried to assault me, but you expect me to walk you to a taxi. Even though I know that I was in no way at fault in what happened with Brokaw, I still suffer years of humiliation and isolation. I really do hope that by telling my story and by sharing the light, Comcast will understand why it is essential to hire outside counsel to investigate this deep-rooted problem. Well, it'll be interesting how that is solved there with Tom Brokaw and what Tom Brokaw did or what Tom Brokaw didn't do. Very difficult here. We would assume that at this point in her career, wherever it is, that she effectively is, I guess you'd say, out of the game. I'm not sure how that, where Linda Vaster is. I'll do a quick search here and we'll go and do the sports. Okay. She was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. She's 52 years old now. Anyway, graduate of Boston University, and she's married to Glenn Greenberg. Oh, Hank Greenberg's father-in-law. Anyway, she anchored and went on to Fox News there, so I don't know where she ended up. Was hired by a Fox News channel. Oh boy. An exclusive interview with O.J. Simpson. Fox Channel debuted a new program with a live audience. D-side with Linda Vaster. She continued in the position until 2000, while pregnant with her second child. Then CEO Roger Ailes agreed to release her from her contract to stay at home. So anyway, she's married to Greenberg. He's a Wall Street investor. Oh, Hank Greenberg, yeah. So that's effectively where it is there. Vaster and Greenberg have endowed a psychiatric chair at Yale University. So that's pretty much that, so she can go out here. It's difficult to say where this story is going or where it isn't, but nonetheless, we'll do the sports, do something safe these days. The NFL has had their little draft there, and one of the picks was the former quarterback from the University of Oklahoma. And we don't do a lot of NFL stories. We still need to, as they say, work out what happened to Colin Kaepernick and that ongoing controversy, and we won't really fully cover them until that is resolved. The Penguins 3-2 over the Caps of Washington. This is the second round of the NHL playoffs, and we have the Sharks and the Golden Knights of Las Vegas. Never forget that name. Anyway, it was 7. They shut out the Sharks, and the Capitals, the Penguins, win the first one, 1-1 in that contest. Let me do the NBA very quickly here. There was only one game. The Celtics were at the Bucks in Milwaukee. Bucks won it 97-86. And let's see what's going on here. As to who is doing what. In this series, this game 6 of the series. Out here, 3-3, I thought it was that. So it's a 3-3 tie here. Oh, wait a minute here. Yeah. Make sure we get things right here. On the Bucks and the Celtics. Series is tied 3-3. So it's best of 5. So the next game will declare the winner there. On to Major League Baseball, or something that we know. Atlanta was in Cincy, 7-4. Atlanta over the Reds, the Tigers, and Pirates in Pittsburgh. Pirates win that one 1-0. The Twins and Yankees in New York. Yankees 4-3. Orlando Rodney was the loser. Beltran was the winner. Anyway, the D-backs and Phillies in Philadelphia. D-backs 8-2 in 13. The Mets and Cardinals in St. Louis. Cardinals came through 4-3. The line score there. The Mets had 9 hits, 1 error. And the Cardinals 11 hits and 1 error there. The Mariners and Cleveland in Cleveland. 5-4 Mariners. The Rays and our poor Orioles, 9-5 Rays over the Orioles. The Red Sox and Blue Jays in Toronto. Red Sox are 5-4. Mr. Sale was the winner. And the Brewers in Wrigley Field, Cubs 1-0. They shut out the Brewers. Mr. Kendrick, Kyle Hendrick was the winner. Mr. Alexander was the loser. Mr. Morrow was got the save. And the White Sox on the south side, the White Sox in Kansas City, 6-1 over the Royals. They finally won something there. Anyway, this will do it for us. A story we wanted to bring up out of Colorado from the Public News Service. We'll have to get it tomorrow night. We will return with the Week But Was on a Saturday morning, as we normally do. We'll have a numbers man as our macroeconomics program. Incidentally, in Q1 of this year, the consensus, at least by the Reuters economists, the quarter will be flat as far as consumers are concerned. The consumers sort of ran out of gas after Q4. We talked about this quite a bit. A lot of credit card buying for the Santa holidays, etc. And the retailers are going out of business, and many more. We'll talk a little bit about that also, and where energy prices stand. So we're still working on the James Comey book review, The Higher Loyalty, as he called it. And we still have Puerto Rico sitting on the shelf there, and maybe we'll get an open source report done. But nonetheless, have a good weekend, everyone. We'll see you on Saturday morning on the Week That Was.